Hello student, in previous video we have seen about the difference between the acquired traits and inherited traits. Now in this video we will study about the evolution and classification. Both evolution and the classification both are interlinked with each other. Because due to the evolution there is changes occur, and due to the change the new species is arrived. And by the comparison of the species we have to do the classification. So we can say that the classification of the species is the reflection of their evolutionary relationship. The more characteristic of two species have in common, the more closely they are related. So we can conclude that if any species they share a common character, that means they are closely related. So we can conclude that as well, that they are comes from the one species. That's why they have a lots of similarity between them. And the more closely they are related, the more recently they have a common ancestor. Similarities among the organism allow us to group them together and to study their characteristic. Let's see one more time. The evolution and the classification is both the term. The evolution and the classification we can interlink with each other, because the classification of species is a reflection of their evolutionary relationship. The more characteristic two species have in a common, the more closely they are related. The more closely they are related, the more recently they have a common ancestor. So the similarity amongst the organism that allows us to group them together and to study their characteristic as well. Here you can see the frog and lizard, and here the bone structure of bird and human. So from that we can also get the evidence of the evolution. So first of all, we see about the homologous organ. Homologous organ means their morphology, and we have to study about their anatomy. This homologous organ means they have a same structure, but they perform the different function. So that kind of organism that we consider as a homologous organism. So these are the organs, they have a same basic structure, plan and the origin, but they perform the different function. So that comes under to the homologous organ. So this homologous organ is also provide us to evidence for the evolution by telling us that they are derived from the same ancestor. If I ask that, write down the short note on the homologous and the homologous organ and the analogous organ. Then in homologous organ, the function is different, but the structure is same and their origin is also same. So we can write down that these are the organs that have a same basic structure, plan and the origin, but they perform the different function. And this homologous organ provide evidence for the evolution by telling us that they are derived from the same ancestor. Here you can see the structure of bat and the bird. The structure is same, but both the function is different one. For example, here you can see the forelimbs of the horse. It is used for the running. Wings of the bat. It is used for the flying. The structure of the forelimb of horse and the structure of the wings of bat, both are the similar, but the function is different. The forelimbs of horse, it is for the running, but whereas the wing of bats, it's useful for the flying. Same like for the paw of cat, it's a help for the walk, scratch and the attack. So same basic structure plane, but they have a different function to perform. So this kind of organ comes under to the homologous organ. Homologous organ means they have a basic structure, means the same basic structure, but the function is different. And the example of forelimb of horse, wings of bat, paw of cat, that comes under to the homologous organ. Now let's talk about the analogous organ. In analogous organ, they have a different origin. Means the structure is different but the function is same. That means these are the organ that have a different origin, that they all are not comes from the same origin. Means these are the organ that have a different origin and the structure part but the same function. Now the analogous organ that provides a mechanism for the evolution. Let's see the example of analogous organ, the wings of bat, which is a elongated finger with the skin folded. Same like the wings of bird. Here the wings of bat and the wings of bird, they have a similar function. It is function for the flying. But if you are see the structure, then the wings of bat, it is elongated fingers with the skin folds. Whereas the wing of birds, it is a feathery cover along with the arm. So the different basic structure, but they all perform the same function. For example, it is useful for the flying. So this comes under to the analogous organ. Let's see one more time. Analogous organ, these are organs that have a different origin, means they are not come from the same organ, same origin. They comes from the different origin, but they structural plan, but same function. That means the structure is different, but they perform the same function. Analogous organ provide us a mechanism for the evolution. For example, the wings of the bat, the function of wings of bats for the flying as well, flying only, same like the wings of bird, the function that is same flying. But if you are see the structure, then the wings of bat structure is elongated and fingers with the skin folds, whereas in a wings of bird it is a feathery covering along with the arm. So we can say that it is a different in structure but they perform the similar function. For example, flight. The third thing that is a fossil, and it is known as a paleontological evidence. And fossil, how can we get the idea of evolution from the fossil? The remain and the relics of the dead organism of the past. They are preserve the trace of a living organism. And this fossil archaeopteryx process features of reptiles as well as the birds. This suggests that the birds have evolved from the reptiles. So it is give the one evidence that all the birds that comes from the reptiles only. For example, the ammonite fossil, it is for the invertebrates. The trilobite fossil, it is also invertebrate. The Nyctia, that fossil that is done from the fish. Then the Rajasaurus, this kind of fossil is made by the dinosaur skulls. So this is also give the evidence of the evolution. Now the next topic, that is of age of fossil, means how can we determine the age of fossil, how it is old, how can we know? So by the simple process, we can assume that whatever the deeper fossil are there, that is of older one, and fossil which is at a surface area, that we can consider a new or latest, it is just buried out, that we can conclude. So we can say that the deeper the fossil, that means it is a older one. And detecting the ratio of a different of a same element in the fossil material, for that we can use the radiocarbon dating process, by which also we can get the idea of age of fossil. Now the next one, that is of evolution by the stages. The evolution takes place in the stages. For example, bit by bit generation. It is a long-lasting process. So we can say that it is a bit by bit generation, means the changes occur generation to generation, and it is a very little bit. Now let's talk about a fitness advantage. The first one that is of evolution of eyes. If you are talking about the eyes, then the evolution of complex organ, it is not sudden one. It occurs due to the minor change in the DNA, and however it is takes place bit by bit over a generation. Let's talk about the eye only. The flatworm has a rudimentary eyes. In insect, rudimentary eyes means in that primitive kinds of eyes. It's not completely developed one. Whereas in insect, they have a compound eyes, and in humans, it's advanced one, they have a binocular eyes. So from primitive to complex structure, it is also give the evidence of evolution. So first one, that flatworms, they have a rudimentary eyes. Insect, they have a compound eyes, and in human, as we know, it's a human have a binocular eyes. So this is called the fitness advantage. In that we have to write down the evolution of eyes. Evolution of complex organ is not sudden one. It occurs due to the minor changes in DNA, and however it takes place bit by bit over the generation. The flatworm has a rudimentary eyes, whereas in insect have compound eyes and human have binocular eyes. The second one, that is of a functional advantages, and in that we have to write down the example of feathers. Evolution of feathers. The feathers provide insulation in cold weather, but later they might become useful for the flight. Means at the earlier, the feathers main function, it is for the protection purpose only. It's protect the animals from the cold weather, but later on it is uh, converted into the flying purpose. For example, the dinosaur had a feathers, but it could not fly. Means it is not useful for the flying purpose. Dinosaur had a feather but could not fly using feathers. Then later on, the bird seems to have a later adapted the feathers to fly. So the functional advantage, in that we have to write down the example of feathers. Evolution of feathers. The feathers provide an insulation in cold weather, but later on it might become useful for the flight. For example, the dinosaur had a feathers but could not fly using the feather. And the second one, that is a bird seems to have a later adapted the feathers to flight. In next video, we will see about the evolution by the artificial selection. Till now, whatever we see the evolution, it is by a natural process. But now onwards, for the next video, we will see about the artificial selection. Thank you.